Hi friends, welcome back to another video. And today is a wonderful day because I'm going to be talking through all the books that I read in the month of February. Now, if you watched my February TBR, you know that I was very ambitious with what I wanted to read this month. And if you watched my March TBR, you'll know that things didn't quite go as planned. My family and I got influenza A, and it hit me especially hard. I had to spend a lot of time in bed for about 2 weeks. Unfortunately, I am not the kind of person that can do a lot of reading when I'm not feeling well. I did get a little bit done, but unfortunately because of that, my reading really suffered in the month of February. However, I'm still happy to say that I did complete 3 novels, as well as 3 graphic novels, and I did have 1 DNF that I made it about halfway through. I will talk about that as well. But considering that I was sick for about half of the month, I feel like that's pretty good. I'm still adjusting to being a foster parent, but I feel like I'm finding pretty good rhythms with my reading, and hopefully March will be even better. But all of that aside, I am really excited to talk about these books, so I'm going to dive right in. I think I will go ahead and start with the not so great reads of this month, and I'll begin with the one that I DNF'd, or did not finish. And this is one that I picked for my 25 and 25 book challenge, and it is one that I had kind of high hopes for. But unfortunately, those expectations kind of fell flat. And that book is On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness by Andrew Peterson. This is a middle grade book, and maybe part of the reason that I was disappointed is I kind of went into it thinking it was about something that maybe it wasn't. I was kind of under the impression that the boy and his siblings in the story were going to set out on an adventure across the Dark Sea of Darkness, and at least in the portion that I read, that wasn't happening and wasn't even hinted at happening, maybe very slightly. The author does a lot of info dumping at the beginning to kind of set the stage for you, and given the geography of some things, you could think that maybe these characters will cross the sea in order to fight the big evil in this world. But all of the action, at least in the first half of this book, is set in their own land near their home, and that wasn't really what I was expecting. So this book seems to be more about the Igby children, specifically Janner, Tink, and Lily, and their dog Nugget, who live with their mother and their grandfather, who they call Podo. As I said, the author starts the book with some info dumping or some background about the world, about the geography, about the circumstances that bring us to the present day of the story. And the main thing that you need to know is there was some kind of battle or war in the past where the big bad guy, Nag the Nameless, and his followers fought and defeated the king of this land, Erwiar. And now these people called the Fangs of Dang occupy their land to basically keep an eye on things and enforce their rules, and are just really oppressive to the citizens of Erwiar. So at the beginning of the story, Janner and his siblings are getting very excited for, I think it's called the Sea Dragon Festival or the Dragon Festival. It's a big festival that their community hosts every year that brings in all kinds of new faces and excitement. It's a big celebration, and the kids look forward to it every year. And at this festival, the oldest brother, who is supposed to be taking care of his siblings, accidentally loses his little sister. And unfortunately, they find her in a sticky situation with some Fangs of Dang. And now the family is officially on their bad side, but they pretty quickly escape out of that situation, and even the consequences don't seem to have a lasting impact. Maybe they do as the story continues, but at least in the first half, it doesn't seem to be a big deal. We then kind of have a new situation where the 2 brothers go to this bookshop in town, and kind of another adventure presents itself. We see the siblings start to follow that, but I got to a point about 50% through this story where I couldn't find the main plot line in the story. And if I'm 50% of the way through a book and I don't really know what's going on, that's kind of a problem for me. I mean, I need to have something. Unfortunately, in the story, I just couldn't find myself really connecting with the characters. It took me a while to start to grasp what was going on in the world, and still, I don't know that I can really picture things super well. There were a few things that were hinted at that did seem intriguing to me. Without going into too much detail, I was curious about the bard character. I was curious about Lily singing. I'm curious about a journal that they find, but the author just wasn't giving me enough to keep me engaged. And I just decided I didn't want to give this any more of my time. Maybe someday in the future I'll try again, but as of now, I just didn't care enough to keep going, and there are other books that I wanted to spend time on. So unfortunately, this was a DNF for me. I know a lot of people do really love this series, so don't necessarily take my word for it. I just don't think it was for me, at least at this time. Let's go ahead and just get all of the bad out of the way. And this one might be a little controversial, but the next book I want to talk about is Inkheart by Cornelia Funk. I should have looked up how to say her last name. I know a lot of people really love this book, including one of my best friends, but I really struggled with this one. This was another book that was part of my 25 and 25 book challenge, and frankly, I almost DNF'd this one too. I didn't. I kept going because I was trying to be hopeful, but something about the pacing of this book really was not working for me. This is a book about a girl named Maggie who at the beginning of the story is living with her dad, who is a book doctor or a book repairman. And you know right off the bat that Maggie and her father have a really special relationship with books. But something strange happens one night, and a mysterious figure shows up at Maggie and her father's house, warning them that an evil man named Capricorn is looking for them. Maggie has no idea what's going on, but her father definitely does. And so they pack up quickly, I think the next day, and head towards Maggie's aunt's house, who is a great collector of books, especially rare books. And Maggie's father asks if he can hide a very specific special book with her. Well, unfortunately, this does not work out for them, and Capricorn and his men quickly find not only Maggie's father, but this special book called Inkheart. It turns out that Maggie's father has a special ability that allows him to read books, and sometimes things come out of those books, sometimes things accidentally go into those books, and Capricorn and his men are actually characters from the book Inkheart, and they would like Maggie's father to help them gain more power and wealth within the human world. Like I said, there was something about this book's pacing that really didn't work for me. I loved parts of it, and initially I was kind of enjoying it. I liked the characters, I liked the magic, and I liked the way that stories were celebrated throughout this book. Stories are shown to be powerful, especially when shared and read aloud, and the written word is shown to be really significant within this story especially. And that was something that I really liked. But honestly, I just think this book was way too long. This book is over 500 pages, and if I look at the actual plot of this story, I think it could have been done in significantly fewer pages, like maybe between 300 and 400. Maybe. The story was just really drawn out, and I kept finding myself feeling bored with it. I don't think that I ever felt really excited to pick up this book. I really wanted to like it, and the story itself was fine. I understand why people like it. I just feel like the author could have cut a lot of things out without really even losing the heart of the story. Unfortunately, this one was just very okay for me. I gave it 3 stars simply because I feel like there is value in the story. I just didn't personally enjoy it that much, and I don't know that I care to pick up the other books in this series. If you feel differently and you can provide a good argument, go ahead and put that in the comments below. I'd love to be convinced to keep reading, but for now, I just don't know if this is for me. I have heard that her book, The Thief Lord, I think it is, I've heard that that one is really good, so I'm not necessarily done with this author. I just didn't love this one as much as I really wanted to. Okay, now on to some books that I actually did love. The first one I'm going to mention is Heartless Hunter by Kristen Cicerelli. This shouldn't be a surprise because I talked about it as one of my favorite books of 2024. This was a reread for me, so I'm not going to go too much into detail, but I read this a lot slower than I did the first time, and I think I liked it even more than I did the first time. I read this in anticipation of Rebel Witch, the second book in this duology. That is one that I'm reading in the month of March. But I will say, I highly recommend this if you like romantasy as a genre. It's about a young witch who after being betrayed to the Blood Guard, which is an oppressive group towards witches, is asked by her grandmother to betray her so that she would look loyal to the rebellion and potentially be able to survive and help other witches secretly. The witch becomes this vigilante called the Crimson Moth. At the beginning of the story, she finds out that a witch she's been looking for has been captured and she needs more information. So she decides that maybe she should pursue the interest of a male suitor who might be able to give her the intel that she needs in order to save more witches. The person that she ends up pursuing is Gideon, who is a very well-known witch hunter as part of the Blood Guard. And what she doesn't know is that he is dating her because he is suspicious that she is working with or that she herself is the Crimson Moth. There is so much tension as the characters start to develop real feelings, and even though we jump into the romance pretty quickly, there's still a lot of will they, won't they, and still a lot of solid plot as we follow both of them as they pursue their own mission. I found the story to be really atmospheric, and I highly recommend if that sounds even remotely interesting to you. The next book I want to talk about is the book that my book club read in the month of February, and that is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I mentioned in my February TBR that this isn't one that I was super interested in reading at the time, even though it is romance, which is fitting for the month of February. I just wasn't really in the mood for contemporary romance, but that being said, Emily Henry has yet to let me down. I really love her writing and she always draws me in right away. This is a story about Nora, who is a literary agent in New York City, who at the beginning of the story has an encounter with Charlie, who is a well-known editor in the city, and right off the bat things go terribly south and they decide that they just cannot stand each other, or at least Nora has determined she would never work with this man. Unfortunately, Nora has had a lot of heartbreak in her life. Every time that she gets into a relationship with someone, they go off to a small town, and like a Hallmark movie, they fall in love with the innkeeper's daughter or the coffee shop owner, and the man decides that he is going to leave the city to pursue this life with this new woman. Nora, however, loves her life in the city. She loves being there with her sister Libby. She loves her work, and she has no interest in the small town life. That is, until her sister books them a vacation in the small town where one of her clients' best-selling books is set. Her sister has a long list of things for them to do together, and we wonder if Nora is going to find that small town romance herself. But unfortunately for Nora, or fortunately, she is not the only big city hotshot that is spending time in this small town. That's right, Charlie Lastra is also spending some time in Sunshine Falls in the month of August. Now, initially, I thought that this was going to be a Pride and Prejudice situation where they keep bumping into each other and she continues to just hate his guts until finally he breaks down her walls. That isn't quite the case in this story. The characters pretty quickly discover that they have chemistry, but because of their working relationship, they decide that they really shouldn't be together and that it would never work. Just like the other Emily Henry books that I've read, this is full of fantastic banter. The tension is good. The romance itself is really cute. There are lots of other great plot lines. Something that I've noticed about Emily Henry's books is that often the main character, and I think also the love interest, usually have some kind of family struggle that they're dealing with. So that adds another layer to the plot. In the 3 Emily Henry books that I've read, the main character is also working in the book business of some kind. In Beach Read, the main character is a writer. In Funny Story, the main character is a librarian, and in the story, she is a literary agent. So as someone who loves books, clearly, that's something that I really enjoy. I liked the setting of this book, the small town, as well as discussion about the big city. And I really love the way that the main character stays consistent throughout the story. There are parts of her that change and adapt, but at her heart, she still wants the same thing in the end of the book that she wanted at the beginning. And I really love the way that she stays true to herself and the way that her love interest encourages her to stay true to herself. Overall, I completely loved this book. I absolutely devoured it. And I can't wait to keep reading more Emily Henry. I think she even has a new book coming out this year, so I'll definitely have to pick that one up. But this is another 5-star read for me. The last 3 books that I read this month were all graphic novels. I'm going to start with this one, which is The Babysitter's Club, Mary Ann's Bad Luck Mystery. This is adapted from Anna M. Martin's original series. Sorry, the cover is really shiny. This is number 13 in the series. I did not read this entire series myself as a child, but I did read a little bit of it, and my older sister was obsessed. So I've really been enjoying these graphic novels now as an adult. I think they're really fun, and it's incredibly nostalgic for me. This one, I would say, if you're going to read it, I think it would be good for fall or spooky season. In this story, Mary Ann receives a chain letter in the mail, basically saying, send this to this many people or you're going to have terrible luck or you're going to be cursed. And she has a meeting with the Babysitter's Club, and there's some conflicting feelings about this, but ultimately Mary Ann decides that she is not going to send out the chain letter and they'll just see what happens. Unfortunately, after that, Mary Ann has one of the worst days of her life. Terrible things keep happening, and terrible things happen to her friends, and they all decide that it is because she did not send out this chain letter and now she is cursed. This book was really funny. It was really cute to see the things that they do in order to kind of figure out what's going on, how they're going to break the curse. There's also some drama with some kids at school. Of course, there's babysitting drama and babysitting situations. But this is also set near Halloween. There was like a little Halloween dance, and there's a spooky scene in the cemetery. I thought this one was really fun, and it might be one of my favorites that I've read so far in the series. If you're remotely familiar with the characters, you don't really need to read these in order. So if you're looking for something fun to read during spooky season, I think this is a good pickup. Next, I have another reread. This is The Cursed Princess Club Volume 3. I've mentioned this before, but this is a very popular webtoon series that has been coming out in physical volumes, and I highly recommend it. I read this one in anticipation of Volume 4, which I am currently reading, and it's just so easy to love the characters in this book. There is so much humor and so many beautiful lessons within these stories regarding mental health and self-care, addressing your trauma and learning to have a positive self-image. It's just really, really fantastic. And while I recommend therapy to basically anyone, there are a lot of tools that you would learn in therapy that are talked about in this book. It's really fantastic. There's even a scene in this book where one of the princes meets a character along the road who helps him meditate and look for the source of the negative speech in his head, which causes him to think about his inner child and have a conversation with his inner child, and that ends up being really helpful to him. It's just truly so fantastic. This is a story about Gwendolyn, who is a princess in the Pastel Kingdom. Her other 3 siblings are simply perfect, and she thought she was normal until she meets the Plaid Princes, and the one who is supposed to get engaged to her speaks behind her back about how terribly ugly she is, and this completely shatters her self-image. She starts to run away when she encounters members of the Cursed Princess Club. So she is pretending to attend a prestigious private school for princesses when she is actually going to the Cursed Princess Club, and a lot of fun situations ensue from there. I'm continually intrigued by potential romances that are happening, and of course I'm very invested in Gwendolyn and some of the other characters as they pursue their personal growth and improve their own mental health. It's just really fun and really heartwarming, and I highly recommend it. I'm excited to finish Volume 4, and that will probably be in my March wrap-up. Finally, one of the things that I did read while I was sick was Lore Olympus Volume 5. I mostly read this on my phone using the Webtoon app. It is behind a paywall at this point. You can read quite a few episodes with ads or with free daily passes, which is what I did in this situation. A lot of the series is out in physical volumes now. I have one of them here, but this series is just truly so vibrant and stunning. I do sometimes like reading on the Webtoon app because some authors include music and special notes, and it's just a fun experience. That being said, it's been a while since I've read any Lore Olympus, but I stopped somewhere in the middle of volume 5, so I kind of tracked back a little bit and finished that volume this month, and I really enjoyed it. I love this series. It is a Greek mythology retelling focusing on Hades and Persephone. I don't want to give away too much about the specific volume, but I really like the way that the romance is developing. I'm still waiting for the jerk face. If you've read this series, you know who I'm talking about. I'm still waiting for him to get his comeuppance, but I love Hades. I love Persephone. I like that we get some more insight into the background of Hades and Persephone when they actually first met. I'm just very invested. So I can't wait to keep reading this series. I have loved every installment so far. And if you enjoy mythology, I think this is a really fun adaptation. I like reading different adaptations because I like to see what different authors do with these characters. And I find this specific adaptation to be not only beautiful aesthetically, but I also find it to be really unique in the way that the author portrays the mortal realm and Olympus. I think I've given every volume in this series 5 stars. This one was no different. So that's everything that I read in the month of February. I had a few misses, but the books that I liked, I really liked. So I consider that to be a win. I'd love to know what you read in the month of February. If you've read any of these books, I'd love to know what you thought of them. So please give your thoughts below. Please let me know what your favorite book was that you read in February. And if there's anything you'd like to see from me in the future, I'd love to hear about that too. Thank you so much for watching. I love you, and I will see you next time. Bye.